Since I have been in Michigan, I have spoken, you're now tied for first is the number of times that I have spoken outside of the congregation to which I belong. So this is the third time here, and I spoke at another congregation 3 times. I knew that I was going to be overdressed for you all, because I've been here before. But the way my mother taught me was that when I go to worship, if I am speaking, I should dress appropriately. That's in her definition. I'm sure, though, that she's turning over in her grave because I'm not wearing a tie. But there has to be some compromises in life, right? I was asked to share a little bit about myself. If I get to introduce myself, I almost invariably will say that I am first a father. I have 4 sons, and I have 4 grandsons. I have a wife, and I also now have 2 stepchildren, and 1 who are boys, and 1 who's a girl. And I have 1 step-granddaughter. But the babies don't know anything about step. All they know about is love. And my whole life is about love. I'll share only a bit with you. On April 15th in 1966, I accepted a call to the ministry. So I've been riding this road for a long time. Approximately 10 years later, almost on the same date, I'm not quite sure, I was named General Secretary Select for our denomination. I am a Quaker. And so I became the CEO, the head of our denomination of Quakers in the United States and Canada, which was a wild ride for somebody whose family grew up. Best house we ever had was in the projects, but there it is. I consider myself to be a follower of Jesus. I don't call myself a Christian unless I'm put in a corner or I forget, because there are too many people who say that they are Christians and they don't do anything that Jesus shared we should be doing. So I'm going to read to you from what some people call the New Testament. This is Matthew's 18th chapter, verse 10. See that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I tell you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my parent who cannot be captured by this world. Now, that's my translation. In the Old Testament, Gabriel is sometimes called the messenger angel, who sometimes blows his horn to announce great things. Now, you may be wondering why so many people have been talking about angels today. That this is not an accident. When Annie asked me if I would be willing to speak, and I agreed to do it, she said, "What will the topic be?" It's not my practice to give a topic weeks ahead of time. So I said, let me pray over it. And when I did pray over it, I said, angels walk among us. That was a few days later. And so the others have been called to also use angels. I gave myself certain prompts. I forgot to say I'm a writer. I've published 6 novels, soon to be 3 short story books, 4 haiku books, 2 books of Psalms, a memoir that centers babies. And I'm going to read from 2 of those. But I'm going to begin by something that happened right out of theology school. I joined the faculty of Oberlin College as assistant chaplain. But I have a number of addictions. One of them is jazz. And so I had a jazz program on the radio station, as I had one in Maine when I was studying there. One day I'm coming home. If you know anything about that part of Ohio, you know that it snows almost all the time. It feels like it does anyway. So my show is from 9 to midnight. I'm coming home, and there are flurries dancing in the sky. I can see about 25, 50 yards ahead of me a young man who tries to get into a dormitory, and it's after 12, and so the door is locked. There's only one track. He has to turn around and come past me. When he saw that I was a black man, he didn't tell me that the door was locked. When I saw that he was a white man, I didn't tell him that I had the key, because I was also the director of that dormitory. We were both wrong, but that's what race will do. That's what racial division will do in our country. We can be each other's angel and not be aware of it. Now, I share this story not because I'm proud of it, but because there was a message in it for me. This is not the way I was called to be. When I look at what many people consider to be the Holy Scripture, and there's all these metaphors about creation, and every time the Holy One creates something, it says, and it was good, and it was good. As a Quaker, we believe that each person is basically good because we were created by a good maker. So how do we find that goodness? How do we find that angel within ourselves? I'm going to read from my book, Whispering to Babies, a womb-to-tomb memoir. Each Monday, since other than when the pandemic would not allow me to, I hold babies on the pediatric cardiac ward of Mott Children's Hospital, and I've been doing that since 2011. Each of the babies on Mott's pediatric cardiac ward has chronic heart problems and related illnesses. A few I've held have cancer to add to the mix. These angels don't complain about their condition because they think this is the way of the world. Infancy is not like what we once knew as stationary polar ice. It flows swiftly on a warm river called increasing awareness. While riding the waves, the chronically ill who live long enough will see that everyone their age is not in constant agony, poked daily by needles, or subjected to periodic surgeries, as well as sporadic, painful procedures. Now, we know in that hospital we're going to lose about 30 of those babies a year. And people have asked me, if you know that, how can you continue to work in there? I work in there as a volunteer because these babies bring me closer to the Holy One. They are pure. They have not been contaminated by the racism that I talked about earlier, by sexism. They don't know anything about peer pressure. And this may come as a surprise. They don't whine. We are the whiners. As we lose our courage and we feel that we are more entitled, all they know is what is. They make me closer to. They make me closer to the angel that I ought to be. So when they let me back in, it was 22 months before I could hold a baby. That was hard for me because babies have been my weakness since I was about 5 years old. And so there are those who say Dwight is addicted to babies too. I'm going to take the fifth on that one. So you have to wear a mask when you're in there. And one of the babies who was the first one I held, the nurse told me that baby's mother could not hold her because the baby's mother had COVID. So nobody in the family could come in. Most of the time when I get to hold a baby is because someone can't be there 24/7, or they've given the baby away. So I'm holding the baby weeks later, and I turn the baby around. Now, this baby loves to be danced with. My wife is a great dancer. She will tell you that her husband is not. But I know I have watched mothers all my life dance with babies, and some of you have seen that too. So my mother taught me how to do that. So I'm dancing with the baby to quiet her down. And then we sit down, and I put the baby on my lap and turn the baby around. And the baby smiles 3 or 4 times, and I almost cried. Because she had never seen a smile because of the mask. So we ask ourselves, when do babies learn to show happiness? And it's not coming from us, it's coming from the Spirit. She'd never seen a smile. I'm going to read from my book, Modern Psalms in Search of Solace and Resistance. These are in the order of the days. This is March 22nd that I'm reading. I will never be as tough as you. I learned once more of a nurse taken by the pandemic, and I cry. You have sent these special angels who risk themselves so that others might live. Yet seldom are they honored with proper pay by the society that lives by their efforts. No matter how far we seem to advance, the tracks we follow most are footprints shaped like dollar bills. Give strength to the mourners who understand the heart's outpouring is like water, and what flows to love's sea is what is precious. Now, I have a serious weakness for nurses, too, because we don't respect them the way we ought to. We sing praises to the doctors, and the nurses will go in there and they'll be on the front line all day long, and some of them will die because they're on that front line. I stopped counting when I hit 36 relatives, friends, and close friends of my friends who died of COVID. But one of the first was one of my cousins who was a nurse who died in San Diego. An angel risks her or himself not because the angel considers her or himself to be a hero. It's calling. And we can be called without even knowing that that's what is happening. And we can miss what is happening because somebody does not measure up to our profile, our stereotype of what an angel looks like. I'm going to give you 3 quick examples from when I was in Maine. All 7 years I was in college and graduate school, I had to work full-time while going to school full-time. So I go to theology school, and the president of the theology school learns that I have not paid for a meal ticket. And he calls me in, and he says, Dwight, somebody told me that you don't have a meal ticket. And I said, I don't, because I could afford the tuition, but I could not afford the meal ticket. And I'm working, and I'm going to make some money, and I'll be able to feed myself. And he said, you cannot use your brain if it is not well fed. Now, I wasn't particularly enamored with this man because he was so Eurocentric that one day he had said to us, our forefathers from England, I said, time out, mine came from Africa. But this angel paid so that I could eat. I had a parsonage because I was pastoring for 5 of those years. As a matter of fact, I was pastoring 2 congregations most of that time. And I'm not a winter type person. Because, you know, I told you my ancestors, most of them anyway, they came from Africa. You do not see snow in Ghana anyway. If you're in Maine, you're seeing snow all the time. What I love most about the snow is when it was pristine. So my ex-wife and I are driving home one night, and this guy is going across the parsonage yard in his snowmobile, and I was really, really upset because I couldn't even see it in the daytime untouched because of his snowmobile. I got stuck in snow a couple minutes later, and guess who helped me get out? The same angel who I called a bunch of dirty names, although I translated them when I spoke. Now I'm going to give you a harder piece of where an angel may come from. There was a certain person who I had been told had raped someone who I knew. And when that person told me that, I had nothing but bad thoughts about the rapist. I think that makes sense. So one day I'm at a lake and I'm drowning. And I'm calling for help, and the people around me can't help me because I'm fighting them off. Sometimes you've seen a picture of this. The person who rescued me was a rapist. I share that because we can be redeemed. We can be redeemed no matter what we have done. We look at the worst part of our lives and we say, well, I can't overcome that. You can overcome it if you choose to overcome it. I'm going to read now one of my more recent Psalms. It doesn't even have a number that's going to last. It's 501, written in 21. You are the protector who sends angels who are under divine obligation to demand evildoers let your people go. You can read Putin if you want to. The enslaved and the persecuted, the underpaid, overworked, and bullied, each has a friend in you, lover of justice. Whether the angel is loud-mouthed or soft-spoken, we cannot ignore the message. When we nurture oppression, there is a generational price that must be paid. So we have to stop those who are oppressing others. And we have to stop ourselves when we are not showing up when we should. I believe that what led me to want to speak on angels was what happened at the end of last year. I saw my doctor in September for my annual physical. She says, wow, you're in great shape. I don't think you even need to see me for another year. To which I said, our health insurance costs so much. If I can see you in 6 months, I'm going to see you in 6 months. 2 weeks later, I had pain like I'd never had before. I ended up in the emergency room twice. First time I was in there, and I had not been in an emergency room since I was maybe 7 years old. First time I was in there, a nurse says to me, the doctor does. It took 3 hours for me to be able to see a doctor at our emergency room. You remember when we had the fire in the hospital, at University of Michigan Hospital? That was the day that I went in there, and they would not let anybody see anybody go into the emergency room. I'm in unbelievable pain. And so the doctor says to me, what is the level of pain? And I said, I don't know how to answer that question. She said, compared to what you felt before. I said 9 out of 10. The reason I said 9 out of 10 is because 10 I thought I would be dead. So I was in that pain, having spasms about, I will say 3 dozen, 24/7. We had to go, Diane, my wife who was here, had to put me in a bed, a hospital bed next to the main bed. She had to help me put on my clothes. She had to help me go to the bathroom. She was the angel on site. But I mentioned it on Facebook, and I have buku friends on Facebook. And one of my cousins said, share your progress. So I said, okay, every Saturday I'll do that. Over 1,000 people were praying for me. The pain, I had surgery, I had chemotherapy, it was over on the 30th of December. I feel no pain now. Together with the angel in the house were all these angels spread around the world who were sending me their strength, their love. There was no obligation. They were not on anybody's payroll. What they wanted to do was express their true being. One of the hardest things for us to do as human beings is to accept the love of other folk. Many of us who specialize in giving love think it's a weakness to let other people help us. To be a true angel means more than giving. It also means accepting. Thank you.